Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today, I'm joined by my ESPN colleague, Jason Reid, who used to cover the Redskins, knows this place well. And then it's Therapy Thursday and the doctor is in. So many topics to cover, so many questions to answer. Who are the top head coaching candidates? Would Mike Tomlin really join the Redskins? And more. And then it's more barbecue talk with Chef Mel. A mahi-mahi recipe? Yep, that's something that's going to get you through the weekend. But first, my conversation with Jason Reid. I'm here with Jason Reid, my ESPN colleague. He's been around the Redskins for a long time now. What is it, 12, 13 years, Jason?
Yeah.
So we're out here today. Jay Gruden was fired. We're at Bruce Allen's press conference. Do you think anything is ever going to change here? Did you hear anything that says this time it could be different?
Well, no, actually, to the contrary, John. I mean, what I heard, and which if I'm a Redskins fan, pretty alarming, was Bruce Allen, the team president, really the general manager, let's be honest about it, said that he disagrees with the premise that the team hasn't been successful. Like, look, I mean, not to be sarcastic or snarky or anything, but really? Like, you disagree with the premise that this team, how many playoff appearances have been over the last 20 years?
A couple.
Okay, how many winning records, how many home playoff games have they hosted? So, we can talk about where you can make improvements on a roster. We can talk about the development of Dwayne Haskins and where that ranks and everything they need to get done. But if the person who's in charge of assembling the team disagrees with the premise that the team has been unsuccessful, I don't know where you go from there.
I don't know either. Because you're now going around the league, how different is it here, do you think, compared to other places?
Oh, successful places?
Just in terms of the building itself, the atmosphere, the culture, etc.
Oh, I can honestly say that ever since I've been a national NFL reporter, it really has struck me over the last 3-4 years how things are so much different with successful franchises. With franchises, and I don't mean, I'm not talking about the Patriots, that type of success, the ultimate success. I'm talking about teams that have winning records, teams that are usually in the hunt for the playoffs. I'm not even talking about teams that make the playoffs.
Right.
I'm talking about teams that are generally in the hunt, and if they have a down year, they make decisions where you think, okay, well, maybe they have a shot next year. It is night and day. And I've talked to executives on those teams, and once the tape recorder goes off, and they know what I used to do, like, tell me about the Redskins. and I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with NFL people when I'm going to write a story on a quarterback or a player or whatever, just traveling around the league, doing the type of stories that I do, where once that recorder goes off, they're like, let me tell you something, or let me ask you something. And then I spend usually the next half an hour just them telling me anecdotes about stuff that they hear about this place, and me either saying I've heard it or saying I haven't heard that one. So yeah, it's a lot different.
And what, is it just more? Is it the decision making? Is it the culture? Is it the atmosphere they build here? What is it?
I think it's all of the above. I think that when you look, we have more than a fair sample size to say that this organization is not being run well, and when, again, I have to go back to Bruce Allen, because Daniel Snyder owns the team, but he has empowered Bruce Allen to run the team, run basically every facet of the team, from the business operations to the football operation. And when we were in this position, I guess it was a little more than 5 years ago, Bruce Allen, he uttered that famous quote back then, or the infamous quote, that the team is winning off the field, as opposed to on the field. And today he says he disagrees with the premise that the team is not being successful. Look, it's funny to people who are not Redskins fans, but for people who remember what Joe Gibbs did and the 3 Super Bowls and every year being in the discussion about can they get to the Super Bowl, it's got to be very painful to them. And I generally try not to tweet about the team anymore, because even when I'm kidding around, it's not funny to these people, and I get that. But you really do have to feel for these lifelong Redskins fans, because they're being done a disservice, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when you look at the rest of this year, I mean, obviously Dwayne Haskins' development becomes a big part of it. What would you do with him? Would you just start him right away? Would you want him to kind of marinate a little bit more on the bench? What would you think might be best?
You know, John, that's a tough question, buddy, because if you had Trent Williams, if you had a running game, I might be more inclined to say, well, okay, at some point they've got to get him first-team reps every week. Not just the game reps, but as you know, the first-team reps in practice, because the backups don't run first-team reps. So if Trent, you know, if you had a Trent Williams, if you had a running game, and I think it's fair to say that even the fact that he wasn't getting first-team reps, he was clearly not prepared on another level on top of that.
Right.
So I don't know how you evaluate him given the current state of this roster.
Right.
So I think that's a tricky thing now. But the flip side is that you saw that picture of him on the bench during the Bears game, I believe it was.
Yep.
And there were things going on in the background with Case Keenum and the OC, and he was not engaged, and he was not even looking at it. So then you wonder to yourself, does he need to be playing to be engaged?
Right.
And that opens up a whole other host of questions.
Does.
So to answer your question, I don't know what they do. I wouldn't run him out there, though.
And
I would not run him out there, though.
And the last thing, do you have someone in mind? Like, we know that this is going to be a tough place for anybody to win. It's been proven. Do you have someone in mind that you say, I hope this guy gets a shot or could do something here?
Well, I'm going to answer that by posing a question. If this organization, and by the organization I mean Dan Snyder, if this organization is truly committed to Dwayne Haskins and seeing if they got it right, then you got to bring in an offensive mind and work with this kid. Now, just off the top of my head, there's a guy named Patrick Mahomes in KC, fairly decent quarterback. He gives Eric Bieniemy, the offensive coordinator there, a lot of credit for his development. Eric Bieniemy does not call plays, but he's heavily involved with the construct of the offense and the install and all that type of stuff. So I would think that's somebody who should get a look. But again, are they still committed to Dwayne Haskins? And I think that's a fair question. I think any question right now is a fair question to ask about this organization.
Absolutely. Jason, thanks a lot.
Anytime, Cakes.
Coming up, I'm going to answer your Therapy Thursday questions. A lot of topics to cover. Bill Callahan, was Dwayne Haskins' development a factor in Jay Gruden's firing, and more. Okay, it's Therapy Thursday. I have a lot of questions. Let's get right to it. First one from John Finley at JohnnyBoy1886. How much was the lack of development in Haskins a factor in Gruden's sacking? Okay, John, I don't think it was a big factor at all. His record he was 0-5 this year. They were 35-49-1 again with him overall. That's the only reason they needed to let this, to pull the plug on this right now. I was told that it wasn't mentioned during the final meeting, and I was told by several people that there was no internal pressure on Gruden to play him. And in fact, I think the fact that Bill Callahan said that he's not going to be the starter right away and maybe not for a few weeks tells you that the organization was on board with how things were going for him in terms of the pace or in terms of when he should be playing or not. I was told for a while that even Snyder said that they have to be patient with him. And so now what I don't know is if they sense that Gruden might not be good for him overall because maybe they felt like he didn't believe in him the way that they did. I do know in multiple conversations that the thought about Haskins was that he had tremendous upside and that he would take a while. And I will tell you again that this isn't just coming from one place. That's from players, coaches, front office. I know that Haskins got a couple first-team reps on Wednesday. That's good. Getting a couple more reps won't solve all that he needs to do, but it obviously won't hurt. He just needs to keep working on some of the things away from the field that can help, things I've gone over many times in articles and podcasts. The thing I hear from everyone there, good kid, they want to see him succeed. And yes, even Gruden would tell you that. There was no conspiracy against Haskins, but rather a strong belief that he wasn't ready. Keep in mind, guys, they put him in a situation where they had a player that they knew they were taking at 15 who wouldn't be ready for a while, pairing him with the coach who needed to win now. I don't know that that's fair to either side. I feel bad for Haskins in this process too, because they put him in a tough position. I know they were doing a lot to try and get him ready, and if they can do more, that's great, because that's what he's going to need. I do think there's always a shared responsibility in getting a guy ready. That means the coaches, that means the player himself. But what I will say is whether or not it was a factor in the firing of Gruden, it's a factor for Callahan moving forward. Callahan now, part of his job is making sure that Haskins develop. He's not going to become the head coach, and I'll talk more about that later. But I think that's a big part of his job moving forward. It doesn't mean just playing him right away, but it does mean doing some things away from there. Maybe there's more they can do. If so, that's great. And for whoever comes in as the next coach, Haskins' development will be a major key. That has to be a priority when you're looking at a coach is how will you develop Haskins? Now, Valentino wants to know, at G_running, who are the top candidates for head coach of the Redskins and why? Who would I like to see as head coach, and does a head coach change the culture of the team? Top candidates, really, really early to say. You're going to hear names like Lincoln Riley, Ryan Day. I feel safe in saying those two are massive long shots. Just that's based on what I've heard. So just take that. But I also think logically, why the hell would they leave where they're at to come here? And it's not about money. They're rich. They're going to be rich where they are. They have tremendous security. And if they ever wanted to come out to the NFL, they would look for a situation that is far different than this one. We already talked. Well, let's see. Actually, we haven't. Mike Tomlin is another guy that you're going to hear, and you've probably already heard. That he clearly would make sense if he was free. I can see them being interested in Todd Bowles, who has a strong relationship with Doug Williams. I have been told that Greg Williams has remained in contact with Dan Snyder since interviewing here last offseason. I think names you'd also have to put on the list, Eric Bieniemy, maybe Byron Leftwich. I don't know on that one at this point. I don't know who is legit as a candidate at this point. I think it's, like I said, it's really early. I'd like to see, I don't have a name because what I'd like to see is a strong, disciplined coach. And I don't have a name because I haven't truly researched any of these guys to say who would be best. It's easy to see a name and say, oh, this guy would be perfect. How the heck do we know? You got to research these guys. You can't just go by what you may read in a national narrative or something like that. Because keep this in mind. There are agents that are pushing their guys out there. So they're going to push their guys. Some people may do them favors by promoting their guys, etc. This is how it works. So, and I'm not saying some of these guys won't be legitimate if they are mentioned, but I'm just saying that's why I just don't automatically jump and say, this guy's the best. I think you got to research and call around and do that. That's what I have to do. But I know they should get a coach strong on details, discipline, and holding players accountable. Don't have an inconsistent set of accountability factors. The culture will be difficult as long as the owner and president insert themselves on football decisions. Too many times those decisions get made without much thought about how things fit in the locker room. I think a really good coach could help change that. But the culture does start at the top, and those in power have to want the same thing as the coaching staff. Not that the coach always gets all say, but I think there has to be something more in sync. I think it's fair to wonder, though, if a stronger head coach had been here the last couple of years, somebody more detailed, would things have been better? And I think you can look at them and say maybe they would have. So maybe a different coach would help. It's not like there's a horrible roster base here. Would we look at them differently now, their organization, if there had been a stronger head coach in charge now? Perhaps. But I already know some of the candidates that wouldn't consider, I already know of some candidates that wouldn't consider coming here because of how this is set up here and what's gone on. So some things would have to change to attract the very best guys, and I'll get to that more in a minute. James Lowe wants to know, Tomlin was very good at keeping all the AB stuff relatively quiet. Do you think that makes him ideal for the Skins? Sure, but handling one player will prove easier than the stuff that goes on here. And I'll explain that. If the coach and front office or the president aren't on the same page, then that leads to leaks and the circus atmosphere that ensues. So it's eventually some decisions get made that someone fears will make them look bad or that they are really against, so word spreads on who wanted whom, etc. Regardless, Tomlin also seems to have a good relationship with owner Dan Snyder. That matters. I believe their kids both attend Bullis High School in Maryland. I've seen them at owners' meetings being very friendly and laughing together. That always helps. But in talking to people who know Tomlin, he's not about to bail on Pittsburgh, and if he gets fired, he'd have multiple job offers. Would he want the dysfunction that has taken place here? I talked to one prominent coaching agent who said that those who would want this job would either be daring or desperate. We'll see how this unfolds, but I think that's something to pay attention to. I also think I want to go one last point. is it's not just about handling one player. I think when you're handling a guy like AB, everybody's got to be on the same page with how you want to handle things. When you're on the same page, then you can keep that stuff relatively quiet. But if you're not on the same page, then that stuff starts to become an issue. So I think could Tomlin get them on the same page? If he can, then that has a chance to work. Let's see. But again, I don't know if he would be a guy or not, but he's certainly going to be mentioned because for all the reasons I stated. All right, G-Black at G-Black2 wants to know, will the increased vocal responses by notable sports personalities, Scott Van Pelt, Matthew Perry, I don't know what the hell he thinks, but Matthew Berry, push Dan Snyder to any action. There has always been public ridicule from fans, which was followed with an action. Maybe this is different. Sorry, man. No, it won't push him to any action. If he's not moved to make changes you want by seeing his home stadium full of Patriots fans, then nothing anyone on ESPN says for a minute or two is going to make a difference. I think it's pretty easy to see that fans are upset because you go to games and it's right there in front of you. He's sitting at the games. That's what he's watching. I don't think he's going to say, oh my God, we lost Matthew Berry, we better do something. No. Or Scott Van Pelt. No. I think it's good to keep that alive, but I don't think that's going to be what matters to him. If he's not moved by what's happened, the lack of success in his 2 decades or the last 10 years, I don't think that's going to make a difference at all. Anyways, at RipNipRSC says, I've asked this question on multiple occasions. Okay, well, now I'm going to answer. Who would you consider to be the real leaders on this team? I can't think of anybody. Could you give me 3 guys that are leaders? Anyways, I think the problem is guys that fans consider leaders in the past really weren't. I think fans get wowed by guys who come out and say strong things and do this and, oh my God, he's yelling at this. That's not leadership, at least not to the extent that you think it is. So don't get caught up in some of the public image things. I think real leadership goes on behind the scenes, and guys who work a certain way, take a certain approach. But I will agree, I don't think there is enough, and it's not. And I think some of these guys are too young maybe to ascend to those roles. Again, it's not about vocal leadership and saying crazy things. It's about the approach you take in your work. Offensively, I see receiver Terry McLaurin developing into a guy like that. He's too young for it now, and he knows that. He knows what his place is. He's only played 4 games. I could see Case Keenum or Colt McCoy being that sort of guy. But you have to be the full-time quarterback. It's hard to be a leader if you're in and out of the lineup. Both have the right approach. Dwayne Haskins, too young to be in that role. Let him. He's learning the game first. Ultimately, down the road, he's going to have to be that kind of guy. He started to develop into that at Ohio State, but because he was only the starting quarterback for 1 year. It really was McLaurin who was the leader on that offense at Ohio State. But again, Haskins will have to ascend to that at some point. I see the linemen work in a certain way. I think that's good. I think guys like Brandon Sheriff, Morgan Moses, they work a certain way. So that's all good. Adrian Peterson, I think, is a strong leader in the running back room. Guys pay attention to him. They see how he works, the notes he takes. That's the stuff that matters. Defensively, I think, but I will agree, I don't think there's enough of them. Defensively, Jonathan Allen is a leader. I think Landon Collins is a quiet leader, more by example in the work he puts in. He'll say things once in a while when they need to be, but it's really about your approach. Are you taking care of your business off the field? I also think the leaders have to hold guys accountable, and I think that's where you need more guys like that. I think Allen has tried to do that in the past. I think he's developing more into that now. But I do think they could use more. It's a young defensive group, so maybe some others will emerge. I think that I like the character of this year's rookie group, so they have a chance to have some more guys like that. But yes, I think they could use some more, no doubt, because something's not working, so why not? Ivy West at Dorv. How difficult is it to manage a press conference like Bruce's on Monday where the answers don't really sync with what you believe to be true or what you've experienced? For example, Dan Snyder has made himself available to the press. Ivy, I wouldn't call it difficult. We've all been around Allen for long enough to know how things work with him. It doesn't matter what you ask. It won't be answered to anyone's satisfaction. I think the Snyder part was interesting because he doesn't make himself available. He, of course, can do whatever he wants. It's his team. But he has a fan base that wants answers. And to me, there's a responsibility after what's taken place here in recent years to provide some. He does not like press conferences at all, so I wouldn't hold your breath for that. but he's been asked for multiple one-on-ones over the years, and he declines those too. So I think that press conferences like that will end up being frustrating for everybody because you're not getting necessarily what you want, and mostly that's for you guys. And I'm not going to say it's not frustrating for us on the other end, because you do want some answers that maybe provide either more insight into decisions, more insight into thought process, or whatever. And I think the hard part, sometimes you ask a guy about his 10-year record and he goes back to, hey, we're all 0-5. Well, it's not just about this year when you ask those questions. It's about a 10-year. But again, we ask the questions, they can only answer the way we can't control anything beyond that, and so that's how it's going to go. Bruce Allen is a politician. He's very good at that, at staying on a message, so it leads to your frustration. Reginald T. Skinner, why would the run game improve when Callahan has called it since last year? Good question, Reginald, and I think it'll be more about commitment to the run game. I know in several conversations that Jay Gruden wanted to be a team that pounded the ball. That's what they were becoming a little bit last year before all the injuries, but he didn't always seem committed to it. And I think that's where the key is, and that frustrated some, I know. Callahan says he wants to be, so let's see. I know some here who carry the ball will be happy if he honors that word. Score dictates things, and being committed to against Miami on the ground is easier than against Dallas when you're down by a few scores. But I know there were some runs last week by Adrian Peterson in which he felt he missed a cutback hole or missed maybe the hole because of how the Patriots played it. But that's where getting more carries on the same run would help later in the game. He could have an idea of what to look for now after that one carry, and then maybe snap off a long run if that same situation presents itself. That's where the commitment helps, and I think that's what's happened throughout Peterson's career, so let's pay attention to that. Haskins for Culture at Skins Pet Rock, nice one, wants to know thoughts on John Allen's comments about a good culture. Do you think there is a core of players strong enough to have a good locker room, even with poor accountability at the top? Oh, okay. I think it's hard to have that great culture without having it at the top first. And I say that because there have been guys at the top have wanted that did not fit into what you would consider a good culture. So they clash with guys like Allen who believe in doing things a certain way. I think you could probably put Zach Brown in that category. I think if you're, based on everything I've heard, but I think if you're able to somehow populate the locker room with enough guys like Allen, then yeah, you can overcome it to a point. I think then other teams do it. Not every player on the Patriots is perfect, but they make it work in their culture. The locker room is a certain way, but so is management, and that's the key. Expectations from top down are the same. But I know there is a good young base of guys with an approach similar to Allen's with the Redskins. That's a good start. But this place needs to be more in sync for it to grow and to grow and develop into something more. Perhaps a new coach with some power can help change this, much like Joe Gibbs did. And I think that's why I say I think a stronger coach with some discipline would absolutely help, because then you're setting expectations. But I think this organization, and many have told me this, many have said that they've got to get on the same page with all this, because that just makes it so hard to sustain success. You can build a winning team for a year with what they have now, or with what they're doing now, but to sustain success, it's got to be more in sync than it has been. At Redskins Bucks, at Rudy Bucks, wants to know, what are the chances that this turns into Zorn Part 2, where we end settling for mediocre Bill Callahan and a bad staff? Well, I think it's way too early for that, because they haven't even played a game yet, and I wouldn't see that happening. It's rare for an interim coaches to get hired, and Callahan understands this. It is sort of a last chance for him to show that maybe he could be a head coach again. But if he gets it, and it would be or should be because they had a major turnaround. If that somehow happens, then why wouldn't he be considered? Also, he's not Zorn. Zorn should never have been a head coach. Callahan has been one and is way more respected than Zorn ever was as a position coach. I think Callahan has a lot of strengths that lend itself toward being a head coach. Now, how good he would be, well, he's got a track record in that. He hasn't been one in forever, because others haven't seen him that way in a long, long time. But he does have qualities. He is respected. I think there's a reason why Zorn hasn't gotten back in the game the way he would like to have. But I think what your point is, not so much that he's Jim Zorn, but that they end up settling for a situation And you would think that wouldn't happen again, but with this place, who the hell knows? And I think the problem with it is that if others keep turning them down, they are going to get into a situation where fans might not be overwhelmed with the choice. But I don't know that. There's such a long way to go. At Men's Ray, at Cavs for days. Kyle Smith, can you talk about him? I only have a few more questions here, guys. Kyle Smith, can you talk about him and his potential future role in the Redskins? I think he's a solid piece of the organization and should have his role increase in coming years. He comes across as a smart guy and is a grinder when it comes to scouting. I've talked to him a couple times and like that he has a plan for how things need to be done. I think it's why he's hired some national scouts, which then frees him up to focus on some of the bigger talent in the draft rather than just hitting specific zones throughout the country. He seems to have a good reputation in the league. I like this past class. There was an emphasis put on the makeup of the players in the last 2 drafts that he has really run. Clearly, people wonder about whether he can be a GM or not. I think he'll be groomed for that role by by people, I mean fans. I think he'll be groomed for that role by expanding some on the pro side duties. I don't know how much, but I don't know when that would happen. I also don't think he's going anywhere. I have to double check on his contract situation. I know at one point it was up after this year. I don't know if that's still the case, but they'd be silly to let him walk. And I doubt anyone off this staff really gets hired for a bigger role with another organization after this mess of a season. One thing you need to know about Kyle Smith, he doesn't have an agent. He's not a self-promoter. So I think those kind of things that can limit your exposure elsewhere. And you know how this works. Like if an agent's out there pushing his guy, then a fan base, and some other people pick up on that in the national media, then the fans think that this guy's somehow the next great thing, and that's the guy they want. You can sell it to your fan base. Kyle Smith stays really quiet. So I think that's, that also, he's respected, but he stays quiet. I think he's one of the bright spots of this organization. I think they just need more guys like him, and those in charge need to follow his draft board each step of the way. Nathan Trunkale, at Nathan Trunkale. All right, this is my last one, folks. What's your favorite meat/wine pairing? Okay. One of my favorite pairings is somewhat non-traditional because it's usually white with fish, but it's Pinot Noir with salmon, a good Pinot with salmon. But the salmon I have it with has more of a red-based sauce to it, so that's why I go with the red. But it's also to me, it's one of my favorite one of my favorite pairings. I like it. I play a little Sinatra in the background while I'm cooking that. Also, it's really, really, really hard to go wrong with a good cab and a steak. That is a classic. And with that, we're on to Chef Mel for some more barbecue and food conversation. Welcome back. Now, here's my conversation with Chef Mel. All right, another week with Chef Mel. Barbecue, food, grilling, whatever we're going to talk here. Mel, they have the Dolphins this week. That means some good seafood. It should mean if you're going down to South Florida. So one thing I want to ask you about, do you give me a good grilled, is it, I don't know, mahi-mahi would do it for you, or tuna?
I'll do a good grilled mahi-mahi. Now, what I do with that grilled mahi-mahi, I put a little bit of jerk into that seasoning and do that for the grilled fish, and then top it off with some pineapple sauce or mango salsa. Then you can add some plantains and some black beans and rice or whatever to the dish, and then you got it. You know what I'm saying? You got the Miami style. Well, that's the Chef Mel style.
That's the Chef Mel Miami style.
That's my style.
That's your style. So how long do you grill them? How long are you going to grill it?
Well, you want to grill it on both sides. You want to flip it over on both sides and get a good grill mark on a mahi-mahi. So until it's done, so it's a few minutes. Fish don't take that long to cook.
No, it does not.
So especially on the grill, you want to just monitor it and just make sure that it's cooked well all the way through.
And so we're talking, I guess it depends on how big.
How thick the cut of the fish is. Sometimes if you're getting a fresh mahi-mahi, sometimes the cuts of it is thicker than the other. Always with fish, that happens that way.
Right.
So you just gotta whatever cut you're using, just watch out for the for how long you want to have it on there for. Typically it should take only the 6 minutes, 3 minutes on each side, and you should be good from there. But I tell you, add that jerk seasoning to it, and then you can marinate it overnight. and it'd be whew.
What are you going to marinate it in?
I mean, in some jerk season, you want to.
Oh, with the jerk season overnight? Okay.
Overnight, let that thing sit in there, soak in there. Oh man, it's gonna be.
Do you have a go-to? Now you do your own jerk seasonings, correct?
I do my own jerk seasonings. Then if it's something I have to go, like on a fly, something like I have to do real quick, I get a bottle of jerk season. But it's good to make your own. But if not, you could just get it out the store.
Is there one like at the store that you would go like?
Yeah, the Jamaican is a Jamaican style jerk seasoning. Well, they all should be all Jamaican, but I'm talking this is officially like,
right, it's Jamaican style.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Then, along with that, and you brought up the plantains, and we just had a meal here with your plantains, and I told you they're awesome.
Man.
I always have a hard time. I have a hard time doing them consistently right. Sometimes I get it right, and sometimes I don't.
Well, what you got to do, what you got to go to is with the plantains. Just like on the grill, you got to just watch them. You got to make sure that you don't leave the stove top, don't leave whatever way you're preparing it. It's frying them. You want to fry them really well, but you want to take them out as soon as you see them get golden brown. You don't want them to be really really dark looking. You want them just right, and then let them sit, let them rest for a while, and when you let them rest, they're gonna come out
the
really
sweetness
good.
Comes out well. What are you putting in there with it? Usually just like.
Just grease.
Just grease. That's it.
Just grease.
No
nothing.
No cinnamon. No brownie. Nothing.
Nah.
Really?
Nope.
What kind of grease?
Grease.
Do you do in bacon grease or just any
No.
kind?
Oh, heck no.
That would be gross.
Bacon grease? You can't. I mean, you can put bacon on people.
Well, you can, but like that doesn't sound appealing to me.
It don't sound. I don't want no bacon.
That. Not with the. So what? You just
John,
regular grease.
John, you lost me on that one today.
That's why
you must have bacon on your mind.
No, and I don't even use a lot of that, to be honest. When I'm cooking, I wasn't sure what kind of grease you're putting with it. That's all. Because when I've done them, I put it with sometimes with some butter, sometimes with a little bit of grease, but also with some cinnamon
fried
or
grease, some cooking grease,
really, so just basic grease.
Yeah.
Wow. So because when I'm
just some good old fry oil, some oil that's good with frying.
Okay, and I've done that too.
And that's nothing too. A lot of people, some people don't know the difference between oils, like olive oil, fry oil, all
Virgin
those different everything. You gotta make sure, because you might just be using it for dressing.
Correct.
And then why it's coming out wrong.
Right. No, that's absolutely right. Well, I usually I'm following with the plantains. I'm following some level of a recipe to see, because I don't trust myself yet with those. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm always using. Whatever they're recommending is what I'm using. So it's more about to be honest, it's more about sometimes tending to it, because then you get like what I've noticed with yours. It's fully browned. It's fully cooked. And I think that's one of the mistakes that I have a hard time with.
Yeah, you get better at it, man. Just keep practicing.
Reps.
So what you think about your mahi-mahi? Well, mahi-mahi you will come up with.
I don't make mahi-mahi. I order it, but I don't make it.
Now, another one I do, too. I do a General Tso's glaze on there.
Really? On the mahi-mahi?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, that'd be good, too. You could do that one, and then you could, make it sweet and spicy and add some red peppers to it. Or you could use some, you just want to, have a little kick to it. So you can have a little something spicy on it to go on, underneath. You
like the spice stuff?
I mean, I like sweet and spicy. I like to, go.
It's a good
around.
mix.
Yeah, it's a mix around.
It's a mix. It's a good mix, and that's where it says. But what I've always liked about your food, there's a balance. Like if you have the chicken wings, there's a kick to it, but there's a balance. You have the good mix with the acidity and some of the spicy with the pineapples on there. So that's what I was like. Now the other thing you were talking about in the room, and I want to bring this up because people are afraid of this one, is kale. How do you make kale taste good?
Oh man. Just basically, the basic thing is oil, olive oil. Just a couple of tablespoons of olive oil to saute the pan, to get the pan going. And then you want to add some, some garlic, some fresh garlic. You want to have a little mince, and then you want to do salt, pepper. Now, what I do with my kale, I actually add a little bit of extra seasoning to it to give it more flavor.
Okay.
It's like you can flavor kale, and I'm talking about it's delicious. I really didn't, too care for my super greens now that I'm really having fun with them and really playing around with. Yeah, the spinach. It's like I do sesame oil with my spinach. I just do different things that just taste good. Like vegetables are so good. And then I'm at the farmer's market and I just go crazy just enjoying all the vegetables now and what I could do with them. And just I want them to taste good. So you need some good vegetables. Y'all come see me. Come see Chef Mel at 12 Tables and I hook you up.
There you go.
Know what I'm saying? But it's going to be a charge though. But I hook you up though. Come see me at 12 Tables. I'm at 12 Tables Elegant Dining. You look me up. Find me there. Instagram 12 Tables. I'm here. Y'all have a good one.
Awesome. Thanks, Mel. That's it for this week, folks. Thank you very much to Jason Reid and Chef Mel for joining me. As always, thank you for listening and thank you for your questions. I know this hasn't been easy for you. I know it's frustrating as hell. Hang in there and we'll try to get some answers for you.